Welcome to Green Dot Daily, live every weekday at 3 Eastern on the Action app and YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed. I'm Maria Marino, and today on the show, Michael Leboff gives his pick for Game 7 between the Oilers and Canucks tonight. Billy Ward also has MLB picks, but we start with hoops. The allure of MSG wasn't enough to propel the banged-up Knicks into the Eastern Conference Finals. Tyrese Haliburton shot 50% from three en route to 26 points, and the Pacers cruised to a 21-point win, setting an NBA playoff record by shooting 67.1% from the field as a team. They are massive underdogs heading into the third round against the Celtics. Out west, the Timberwolves pulled off the biggest comeback in NBA Game 7 history after being down 20 in the second half, going on to beat Denver 98-90 at Ball Arena. T-Wolves are into the Western Conference Finals for the first time since 2004 and are minus 170 to win the series. Mavericks are at plus 138. Ant-Man and Kat say the Wolves are right on schedule.
And usually in NBA history, it says you have to lose and lose big before you win. What is it about this team that says
we lost last year?
Yeah, but that's different. You have to lose at a bigger stage. Usually, teams usually.
It's the playoffs. We lost last year.
We lost the last 2 years. Shit.
God damn. How much more we got to lose?
Yeah, how much you want us to lose?
Been losing for 20 years.
I mean, that's just the truth, dog.
God damn.
We now turn the floor over to our NBA Commander-in-Chief and President of Buckets, Matt Moore, for his weekly State of the Union address.
My fellow NBA fans, happy conference finals. We're down to the final four. I'm glad to be with you to share the State of the Union. Let's start with what's strong, and that's got to be the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Wolves peeled off the largest comeback in Game 7 history with their win in Game 7. They came back from 20 down in the second half. They beat the defending champion Denver Nuggets on the road, ending their quest for a repeat title. In doing so, the Wolves reversed 2 decades of absolute miserable franchise futility, and that's very present in the minds of the Wolves players that you talk to after the game about what that franchise and their fans have been through. It's an exciting moment. This is probably the best team that this Wolves team has ever had, which is always an exciting moment for them. I was also really encouraged by the fact that this was a real redemption moment for both Rudy Gobert, especially given that people were saying he needed to be benched at the half of Game 7. Not true, by the way. He was instrumental in getting them back into that game by drawing fouls. And Karl Anthony Towns. Towns has always been a player that played hard. He tried to go at the game as hard as he could. He wanted to be a winning player. There are players in the NBA that want to get numbers. They want to get buckets. They want to do things their way. Towns has been a guy that has clearly always wanted to win. He just didn't know how. And to see him learning that on this stage against that team is one of the coolest sports stories, I think, in the league this season. Was extremely happy for Karl Anthony Towns after the Wolves advanced to the conference finals to face the Mavericks. That series should be, though, maybe a little tougher than the Wolves expected. They were a little overjoyed last night. We'll break that down on the Buckets podcast later with Brandon Anderson. As for the bad, well, there's nowhere else to go really but the Nuggets. They've dropped a 20-point lead in the second half of a Game 7 at home. Their chances for a repeat are now squashed. The lack of depth crushed them. There's been a lot of conversation about how their loss to the San Antonio Spurs in Game 81 was what did them in, but they would have simply had to face the Wolves one series later had that happened. I'm pretty confident the Wolves would have reached the conference finals, and had that happened, they still would have faced the same Wolves team that was built to beat them, as Nikola Jokic said after last night's game. The Nuggets spent too much energy chasing down the 1 seed, thinking that they could have it both ways. They wanted their cake and to eat it too. They tried to be prepared for a playoff run, but also secure the 1 seed by pushing to the end of the season. And in Game 7, they were absolutely gassed. That followed a playoffs where they were unimpressive versus the Lakers and got trounced in Games 1 and 2, putting them in a hole that ultimately they could not dig out of in the final 24 minutes. So now there's going to be questions about this offseason for the Nuggets. Michael Malone has been there now 9 seasons. Next year will be his 10th. Is that enough? Is that too long for him to be there? Does he still have the ear of the locker room? Jamal Murray really struggled after being such a playoff riser. Is it time for maybe them to look elsewhere for another playmaker? Michael Porter Jr. was largely useless in the series. Do they need to move Porter's salary in order to gain more depth so they're not as gassed out? Anytime that you lose, there's big questions for the offseason. And even though the Nuggets just won the title last year, they're still going to face a lot of questions heading into the summer.
Well, the top of the West especially has been a gauntlet. It's the Mavericks now who await the T-Wolves. And in the East, the Pacers will take on the Celtics, who were the best team in the league all year. So what do you make of the matchup in the East?
Yeah, Celtics are huge favorites. It's hard to find ways to bet this series. It's going to be very difficult given that the Celtics are just such a huge favorite. And they should be. This is the 6th seed in the Pacers. They got past the Bucks without Giannis and Dame, and then got past the Knicks without, well, pretty much everyone by the end of it. I'm pretty sure just Miles McBride and Precious Achiuwa were the only ones left on the floor for the Knicks. Maybe half of a Josh Hart. So they're going to be huge favorites in the series. The Celtics are going to get past Indiana. I don't have any doubt about that. The question is going to be about how many games it takes. I will say this. The Celtics' big problem is their shot variance. They take a lot of threes. They allow a lot of threes, and that's what's caught them at various times. When they don't hit threes, they're extremely vulnerable. This is not the team that you want to get into a variance matchup with. Just ask the Knicks, as they allowed, as Maria said, the highest field goal percentage in NBA history. The Pacers' offense doesn't have an off button. The Pacers' offense never slows down. You score on them, they're not like, all right, let's walk it up and get into a set. They're right back at you. This is going to be a high-scoring series because that's all Indiana knows how to play. Now, the Celtics are better, even without Kristaps Porzingis, who probably won't play in the series. They should get past Indiana. There will be games where they absolutely blow out the Pacers. But ultimately, I am a little bit concerned that the Pacers might take a few more games than expected because everyone continues to underrate how good this Indiana team is. Everyone except for our own Maria Marino, who did in fact bet on the Pacers to win the series. With that said, my best bet for game 1 of the series is going to be Celtics -10. This number opened 11.5. It moved to 9 in some spots. There was a 9.5 that I grabbed. I do have a 10 as well. Look, this is a nightmare spot for the Pacers. This is the big key is teams coming off of game 7s struggle way more than the market allows for. Road teams, road dogs off game 7, facing a team on rest. That's the Pacers here. They're 8-26 straight up, 13-21, 38% against the spread since 2003. Teams off of game 7 as a road dog overall are just 44% against the spread. Tatum's Celtics are 11-7 against the spread in game 1s, and most of those losses came against the Miami Heat, who they are not facing in this series. By the way, and one more, game 1 double-digit favorites are 32-18 against the spread. So I'll lay the points with the Celtics here. They'll smash the Pacers. The market will overreact, and we'll have an opportunity to bet the Pacers later in the series.
Couple of interesting things. So obviously the rest advantage, Pacers starting the series on the road after playing on Sunday, Celtics on 5 days rest. Fully expect the Celtics to take care of business, as you said, but remember the Pacers in both their prior rounds dropped game 1 and ended up coming back and winning the series. The Celtics, meanwhile, dropped 1 game in each of the 2 prior series. So at a glance, you feel like, okay, the Pacers could maybe take 1 or 2. And then also, I think it's interesting too, Matt, that the Celtics haven't been that great at home, and the Pacers have been excellent at home. So I just wonder how that, home versus road situation plays out. But as always, our president of buckets, Matt Moore, thank you for your State of the Union.
God bless you, and God bless the conference finals.
Here's a look at the NBA playoff bracket. You see Dallas, the underdog in the Western Conference Finals after knocking off the top-seeded Thunder. 6 games separated the Mavs and T-Wolves in the regular season. And in the East, again, Boston, the overwhelming favorite in the series with the Pacers, who took out the 3-seeded Milwaukee and the 2-seeded New York. Boston won a whopping 64 games this regular season. Indy won 47. And we bring in NBA and WNBA expert Jim Turvey now. Both of these teams are in different places than they were most of the season, I'd say. Boston is missing Kristaps Porzingis. Tyrese Halliburton seems to be healthier than he was midseason. So what is your play for the series?
You've got kind of a funky look here, but I'm going with the series to be exactly 2-1 in favor of Boston after 3 games at plus 100. Kind of walk through why I'm looking at approaching it this way. So Indy's obviously coming off the longer, harder series, but we have time and time again seen Boston's ability to give games away. I mean, it's happened in the game twos of both series so far. There's kind of multiple routes of getting to this bet. We have the Boston letdown game. We could also have Indiana just playing very well in the game. We also could have the classic Indy down 0-2, game 3 at home, kind of must-win route. We have that option as well. And Boston has been up 2-1 in both series. I mentioned both times they lost game 2. Indy was down 2-1 after in their last series when they were on the road. We've seen Indy at home versus Indy on the road. They're really good at home, especially against the Knicks. They struggled a bit more on the road, so this is kind of playing into that as well. It also gives us the two non-Kristaps Porzingis games that we know are for sure non-KP games. I believe he's ruled out 1 and 2 already, so we get that in there a little bit as well. The Pacers had some success in the regular season against Boston, but really trying to dive into it too much. Like you said, there's a lot of moving parts here. Siakam wasn't on the roster for a lot of them. There were injuries for several of these. So I'm not entirely sure how much looking at the regular season gives, too much value, but it's definitely a team that can push Boston a little bit. Again, I wouldn't be taking them on a series line. There is another way you could approach it potentially, because I like what Matt talked through about game 1. Those road dogs after game 7 aren't a great look potentially. So maybe you just sit out game 1, then you just play Pacers money lines on game 2 and game 3, hoping to hit one of those two. Might pay out decently as well. But something along the lines of, I'm picturing Boston to give 1 game away. At least they've done that time and time again, but they're definitely the better team in the series. So I want to be, on their side of it. So a couple of different ways to approach it there, looking at this Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, I really like it. I mean, I could definitely see the Pacers maybe sneaking up on Boston in game 2. And if not, in game 3, just having that tremendous home court advantage on their side in a situation where you kind of have to win if you're going to stay in the series. So very nice, Jim. Now to the Western Conference Finals, how are you betting this series? I think it's a lot harder to predict overall.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm here. I've been the low person on Dallas all year. My best bet, Dallas to win game 1, Dallas to win the series plus 300. I can't believe I'm here, but it is where I'm at. So Luka is just a really tough matchup for Minnesota. They're likely to start with Jaden McDaniels, maybe Nickeil Alexander-Walker, like that combo that there is such a good defensive combo, kind of rotating through those two guys on Luka. Here's the thing, Luka is a lot bigger than those two guys, and I don't think they are going to be able to sustain that, even if they have, Rudy roaming in the paint. I think they're probably going to have to move to Anthony Edwards guarding him, maybe even Cat at times. I don't like either of those matchups, Cat because it's Cat guarding Luka, and I don't want that, and because I don't want to burn him out on both ends. I can't believe I'm here. But Dallas has played incredibly well. I thought Jason Kidd actually just had one of the better coaching series he's had in a while. I thought he really outcoached Mark Daigneault. Thought he pulled the right strings, had made the right adjustments throughout the series, and their defense looked very good. This Minnesota offense has really struggled at times. I'm leaning the Dallas way here, and I want to bring the game 1 of it in as well because Minnesota is coming off this tough series with Denver. One less extra day of rest. They've got the one less game overall that they played, Dallas in round 2 against a worse and less physical opponent. So I lean towards Dallas in game 1. I lean towards Dallas in the series. I put the two together. They're, obviously correlated. If Dallas steals game 1 on the road, they're going to be in very good shape for the series as a whole. Luka, he's looked off at times this series. I've never been a big Luka person in general. I think he's playing some of his best basketball. I think there's a bit of narrative to it, but I do think that he looks more locked in. They cut to Dirk yelling at him to stop whining on the sideline. I do think there is something to be said for oftentimes Luka will be whining, caught behind a play, and the team goes down and scores on the other end. If he can be engaged and not doing that as much, I do think it's a big factor for them, especially on the defensive end where they looked so strong in the last series against the Thunder.
Absolutely. He's lucky he didn't let it get the best of him in the last game. I mean, I think the prior game that Dallas had won was like his best game of the series, Luka, and in many ways because he just wasn't yelling at the refs constantly. This is a little bit of a tough one for me. I think it's smart, but I just don't know what Luka you're going to get. But I do agree, it's just a really, really tough like mismatch for the T-Wolves. Okay, let's go to WNBA now. We got 2 games tonight. Storm at Liberty is 1, but you have a play on the rematch from opening night between the Sun and Fever. This one is at Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
Yeah, I'm going with a first. So this is kind of a unique bet. So I'm going to walk you through where you can find it. If you go to quick bets and then their first team basket. So this is not the first basket of the game. It's the first basket for their team. So for the Connecticut Sun, I'm betting Bree Jones to have the first basket for her team at plus 430. Shout out to Calvin Wetzel. This has been a market that he's been really doing well in. If you're in the Discord, which you should be, you definitely know Calvin. If you follow my bets, you definitely know Calvin. If you do any sort of betting on women's sports, you should know Calvin. And he's man of the people. So he let me bring this to GDD today and give him a shout. So Bree Jones is working her way back from an Achilles injury last season. So the minutes are low for her right now, but it's kind of falsely deflating her statistics. She's last among starters for the Sun right now in terms of points per game, but that's because of that minutes limit. Her usage is a little bit down as she works her way back, but there's no way she should be, at plus 430. I would make this more around plus 250, and I would play it to about plus 300. So there's even a little bit of wiggle room on this. She was the team's second leading scorer the last season when she was healthy. They like to go to her often. She's a post player. Teams love to go to the post early in the game. And against the Fever, I don't want to play it overall because the Fever have a pretty good edge in terms of jump ball stuff. But in terms of first to score for the Sun, I really like Brianna Jones plus 430 in that market today.
Yeah, and I think this is just a really good strategy in terms of the Sun, getting going in the paint early, establishing that inside threat. And they had a lot of success against Aaliyah Boston and Alyssa Smith in their opener. So another one I really like, big surprise, Sun looking for their 3rd straight win to start the season. Liberty, by the way, looking to start 4-0. Both of those games are on ESPN networks at 7 o'clock Eastern. Jim Turvey, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Over to NHL, where there's a Game 7 tonight. And according to Bet Labs, Game 7 unders are not only 2-0 this season, but also 13-5, or 72% since 2019 and 62% since 2006. 5 consecutive Game 7s have gone under their totals dating back to Seattle versus Colorado on April 30th, 2023. As we welcome in our hockey expert, Michael Lieboff. So Oilers, Canucks, decisive game tonight. The total is 5.5. Is taking the under the move?
I don't think so in this situation, actually. This series, this is the 7th game of the series. The first 6 games all had 6.5 as the total. But now, bookmakers and the betting market, as soon as a Game 7 gets confirmed, everybody rushes to the under. It gets pounded. It's quickly adjusted. So we're looking at a series that was 6.5 throughout, and now it's 5.5. That seems like a little bit of an overreaction, especially with the way these two teams profile. The Oilers, of course, have that offensive upside with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, Evan Bouchard, a terrific power play. But the Canucks could score too, right? They have some pretty good players up top, even without Brock Besser. Who's going to miss the game because of a blood clotting issue. And the biggest issue here is the goaltending. The Canucks are down to their 3rd string goalie, Artur Silovs. The Oilers have already gone back and forth with Stuart Skinner, Calvin Pickard, and now they're back to Stuart Skinner. So you can't trust either goaltending situation. So one soft goal and it throws everything off script, off the usual Game 7 script. So I actually don't think just blindly betting the under would be the right decision. I know there are a lot of people out there who will go do it anyways, and all power to them. Betting is supposed to be fun, and if that's how you want to have your fun for this Game 7, go for it. I'm going to go a different direction, though. I think that this game, just because it is a Game 7, doesn't mean it's got to be tight. I know these 5 out of the 6 games have been 1 goal. We've seen overtimes, but I think there's absolutely a chance that this thing turns into a rout either direction because of the goaltending. I do think the Oilers have a better chance to do that. They have the offensive upside. They're not missing one of their best players like the Canucks are, and the goaltender for Vancouver, Artur Silovs, does look like he's been found out a bit. He had a rough one in Game 6, which ended 5-1 for the Oilers. So I'm going to go with an alternate puck line here, -2.5 at 3-1 on the Oilers. You also get the benefit of the fact that it is a game 7. It's an elimination game. So if Vancouver is down 1 or 2 goals, the coach will pull the goalie a little earlier as they try to fight their way back in, and that obviously helps in these situations. So, yeah, I'm looking at that Oilers alternate spread. I think you can go with the Canucks alternate spread too if you like Vancouver more in this game. But I think that logic is where you should go. And don't forget, like, just because it's a game 7 doesn't mean it has to be tight. We've seen some real routes in the past. The first one that comes to mind is Carolina and the Rangers and in 2022, and everybody expected that to be just a nail biter with the way those two teams played, and it ended up being 5-1 and over very quickly. So that's how I'm looking.
So a good PSA from you there, riding with Edmonton and Connor McDavid. And while we await the matchup in the Western Conference Finals, the East Finals are set with the Panthers and Rangers. What do you expect in that series?
Well, the first thing I expect is a lot of discourse about the odds. We saw this with the Rangers and Hurricanes in round 2. A lot of people were surprised to see Carolina as a decided favorite. Turns out those people who were surprised were right. But we're going to see it again because the Panthers opened -120, which already raised some eyebrows since the Rangers were the President's Trophy winner and had hardly put a foot wrong in this postseason. But Florida took money. They're now at -140. That looks about right to me. I don't really think there's much value on either side. But if it tells you right away that the market is still a little skeptical with how the Rangers are winning games. They were down 3-1 in game 6 after going up 3-0 in the series against Carolina and needed a gift goal from Freddie Anderson to get themselves back in that game. And there was a couple other soft ones in game 6 and then throughout that series. So it's hard to imagine that happening again. Doesn't mean the Rangers can't just come out and blow the doors off the Panthers. They definitely have that capability. But I do think that Florida presents a much different challenge to New York than what they've seen in the first 2 rounds. The Panthers are deep. They are physical. They're relentless, and they are much more clinical than the Hurricanes proved to be. And the goaltending should be an upgrade. The Rangers have not faced a goalie who's posted better than an 880 or a team that's posted better than an 880 save percentage in the playoffs so far. I'd imagine that Florida would be likely to get that better than that from Sergei Bobrovsky. So I do think that there's an argument to be made for both sides. But if you are someone who wants to bet the Panthers, I would just bet the game 1 line. It's a pick 'em. They're on the road. But if you think that Florida is rightfully favored in the series, just go there, see how this one plays out. Because they're, like I said, the Rangers are a little bit of a tough nut to crack from a betting standpoint. So if it doesn't go your way, then it's better than laying the -140 in the series. You can just bail out there. And there are a couple of long shots that I like here in terms of player props to lead the series in goals. Vladimir Tarasenko, he's got a great line assignment in the top 6 for Florida, who should have a decent power play as well. It's a revenge narrative for him as well. He was on the Rangers' last playoff run. And then Florida defenseman Brandon Montour is 110 to lead the series in points. And he's an offensive defenseman. He's gifted skater. He moves the puck really well. And with the way Florida plays, I think that has a shred of value too. So those would be my 2 long shot looks for this one.
Yeah, and aside from the long shots, I like the strategy you said of just kind of betting game 1 and going from there, because everybody seems to think that the Panthers are a little bit better and the odds reflect that, but it also seems like this series could go either way. And that begins Wednesday, by the way, at 8 Eastern in New York. West Finals will start on Thursday. Michael Leboff, thank you.
You got it.
To baseball, and a couple of today's games are showing lopsided money on totals. We have the Orioles and Cardinals. The total going over 8 has garnered 95% of money. Also, Angels and Astros. 88% of money is on the over of 8. 82% of money on Houston as well, who is favored. As we say hello to Billy Ward, he has cornered the market on whether a run will be scored in the first inning. And your first bet of the day is on a no-run first inning between Baltimore and St. Louis.
Yeah, I don't love seeing all the action the over's getting in that game, but as long as it doesn't happen in the first inning, doesn't really matter for my bet. Kind of surprised to see the over getting so much love. It's 2 really solid starters here in Dean Kremer and Sonny Gray. Gray he looks like a brand new man with the Cardinals this year. Kremer not as good, but he gets to face the Cardinals, who have just been a really bad offense this season. And even looking at the Cardinals' full season stats are a little bit misleading because that was with Wilson Contreras, who's been out for a little while. So they're actually a worse offense than their full season numbers suggest they are. So it's a little bit juicy on the Nerfy around -125. I don't mind those though, because pretty much all the risk is just on the Baltimore side. We're fairly confident St. Louis isn't going to do much to mess that up for us. So with that kind of one-way action, I can lay a little bit more juice. Any given team is not going to be that likely to score if we're only worried about one side.
Okay, sounds good. The other game you're looking at, Angels Astros, but in this case, you're going Yurfie instead of Nerfy.
Yeah, and this one, obviously, I feel better hearing about all the action coming in on the over. But it's an interesting one. It's two solid pitchers. They're both left-handed. Both teams have been much, much better against southpaws this year. The Angels are a bad offense overall, but they're a top 10 group when we were just looking at their lefty splits. So that's pretty solid, even against Framber Valdez, who's been very good. But the real driver of this is Houston, who 2 hitters in their top 3 are among the top 20 hitters in baseball. So having that kind of power at the top of the lineup, given the total that we have, it's pretty likely that when those 2 hitters, Altuve and Tucker, are at the plate, that's when some of the runs scoring. You could also go Houston, the team specific Yurfie at +170. I just don't love, we're not getting a good enough price there to justify not getting the Angels side of that, because with their lefty splits, I'm projecting them as fairly reasonably to score too.
But still not too bad pricing wise for either option. Billy, we appreciate when you stop by. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Remember, any picks we give out here on the show, you can easily reference by following Green Dot Daily in the Action app. We keep track so you don't have to. And that's it for this episode of Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino. Thank you for watching, and the show is back tomorrow with Brendan Glasheen at 3 Eastern on the Action app and YouTube channel.